welcome back to The Sheep and the Wolf. I apologise if I look quite yellow. I had to turn my light on because it's evening and it's dark, and also the weather is really bad, so it's like all dark and gloomy outside. So last week was the Booktubeathon, which is an annual readathon which is hosted and was also created by Ariel Bissett. I participated for the second time, and if you want to know how I got on during the week, I did vlog a little bit every day, so I will link that video down below and also up here. The first book I read and finished is this one, Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore by Robin Sloan. I read this book for the challenge to read a book that has yellow on the cover. I liked it a lot. When I announced that I was going to read this, that it was on my TBR, a lot of people kind of warned me that they read it and that it wasn't what they expected it to be and that they were kind of disappointed by it, but I didn't feel that way at all. I actually think that being a little weary going in really helped because my expectations were pretty much zero, so there really was no way that this book could have disappointed me. It's kind of the Night Circus meets the Da Vinci Code meets maybe some Neil Gaiman kind of vibes. There's a secret society and a mystery to unravel and a wise old mentor kind of figure. I think it was quite well written. In retrospect, the plot could maybe have been fleshed out a little bit more, but I didn't mind that when I was reading it. So all in all, I'd say this was a pretty successful first read for the Booktubeathon. My second read was Through the Woods, which is a graphic novel by Emily Carroll that I've been wanting to read for I think close to 2 years. I was sort of saving it for Halloween, but then the Booktubeathon came along, and because I'd never read a graphic novel before and also because I wanted quick reads, I figured this would be the perfect time to actually pick it up. I really love this. The stories are proper scary. There's 5 of them, as well as a little introduction and conclusion, which are both like miniature short stories. My favourite thing is that there's a creepy little song in one of the stories, and I really want to make that into like a proper song that maybe I can perform with my band one day. Anyway, this was a pretty great first graphic novel experience, and I'm definitely looking forward to getting into more. For the challenge of reading a book and watching the film adaptation, I chose The Little Prince, which I don't think I'd ever read in its entirety before, even though it's super short. I'd read bits of it, and I knew like the basic storyline, but I don't think I'd ever read the ending before, so that kind of shocked me. I know it's sort of open to interpretation, but still, it was quite dark. I loved it though. It's told in such an elegant manner, and I don't know, the story just says so much with so few words. The version that I read was translated into English by Irene Testo-Ferry. I think maybe that's how you possibly pronounce her name. Anyway, I think she did a really brilliant job. The film adaptation that I watched is from 2015, and it's an animation directed by Mark Osborne. What I loved was that they used different styles of animation for the different storylines. So like the original story of the prince was done in this stop motion style with beautiful, I think, paper and fabric cutouts, and the actual like the frame narrative that is the narrative of the film is done in regular computer animation style. Story-wise, I think maybe the frame narration took things a little bit too far, especially towards the end. Also because the story itself, like the original story in the book, is kind of a frame narration already, but I guess they had to make it long enough to be a proper feature film. Next up is To Be Read at Dusk by Charles Dickens. This is a collection of 3 short stories, and I used this for the challenge to only read a book after sunset. To be honest, I mostly chose it because of the title, because come on, that's like super appropriate. I read this on 3 separate nights because what I didn't realise going in is that the stories are actually kind of scary. They're all about like supernatural phenomena and ghost appearances and apparitions and stuff, so when you're home alone in the dark reading it and you're also a wuss like me, that may not be like the super best idea you've ever had. I did quite enjoy it. I maintain my position that Charles Dickens is not my favourite author, but I do sort of acknowledge that this was very well written. I also read Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. I picked this book up in January in an underground bookshop in London, and if you've read the story, you'll know how appropriate this is in retrospect. I used this book for the challenge to read something by one of your favourite authors. In my TBR video, I mentioned that I often don't think of Neil Gaiman's work as particularly accessible, but maybe because this one is full length as opposed to short stories, I thought it was very doable. It's set in London, and I don't know London that well. I've been there a couple of times, but as with any big city, I don't really have like an image in my mind of how all the parts connect to each other, especially because in London you tend to travel on the underground a lot. But even though I don't have like a particular connection with London, I recognise that this book is such an ode to that city, and it has such a familiarity with the parts that aren't necessarily always like tourist highlights, and I really love that. After that, I moved on to Eleanor and Park by Rainbow Rowell, which fulfilled the Book You Discovered Through BookTube challenge. This was my first Rainbow Rowell read. I like that alliteration. And it was a lot better than I expected it to be. To be honest, I thought this was going to be one of those overhyped books that has all the YA stereotypes and none of the actual good content. But the subject matter was actually a lot more serious than I thought it would be. Similar to Saint Anything by Sarah Dessen, it covers both the love story but also the more serious issues that these characters are facing in their lives. I also really like Park's sort of emo thing that he had going on. For some reason, I was able to take a little bit more distance, and things that I would have thought annoying before now just amuse me. The only thing that I didn't necessarily love was that it's set in the 80s. I wasn't alive in the 80s, and I think a lot of Rowell's target group wasn't. In fact, I think a lot of them maybe weren't even alive in the 90s. I feel so old now. So I can't really form a picture in my brain of what life looked like back then, especially in the US, which is not where I live. I think the main reason why she chose that setting is because of the music, which is very important in the story, and also to avoid having to deal with like modern technology such as social media and smartphones in the story. While I can see why she would do that, I'm not sure if it was necessary. Finally, I read Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. This is also one of those classics that I'd never really read before, not even in a Dutch translation. The only parts that I ever really read were a couple of sentences that we were supposed to transcribe in one of my first linguistics classes. It was nice, it was short, it's very well written, and Alice is very likeable, very accessible. I do feel like there are a lot more layers under the obvious story that I might be able to get at with help. I'm really bad with that sort of thing. This book also has some other stories in it, including Through the Looking Glass, which I just continued reading, which is why the bookmark is still in there. So these are the 7 books that I read for the BookTube-a-thon. I'm super happy that I managed to get all 7 done. I was actually worrying about that quite a bit during the week because that was like my main goal, because I picked stuff that I felt was doable, and then like midway through the week I thought, oh shit, I'm not gonna get this done. But I did it! Overall, I really enjoyed BookTube-a-thon 2016, and I'm already looking forward to BookTube-a-thon 2017. I just quickly want to thank Ariel for hosting this and organising this and setting it all up. Thank you, Ariel, for doing this year after year. I'm really sure that I'm going to participate again next year because this was awesome. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you again next time. Bye!